today at www.pickilluminance.com.
Peace, peace. I do what I like, I do, I do. Welcome, welcome everyone. Let me see what we got here. We're back. It's Pink Illuminance in the building. Obviously, I'm super provocative, but I just want to be myself. And I think that I'm owed that because I was born with that right. There's nothing on purpose, not to hurt anyone's feelings or insult or what have you. However, I had some. I'm going to get into this. We're going to get into this topic because Indigenous Peoples Day is coming up on Monday, and it's very interesting because we are not Indigenous peoples, and this is not a slight to anyone who is. However, in law, we're not Indigenous peoples, and I'm going to go over why. This is something that, if you go on my post and you do your research on me, like most of you do anyway, you're going to find that I was also using the term incorrectly. However, if no one's going to say it, I'm going to say it because I found out for myself that, yeah, again, we're not Indigenous peoples. We might be able to benefit from some of the laws. However, it still does not define who exactly we are. And I think that it's one of the biggest hoaxes since the feminist movement, where we all thought we were feminists and what have you, since the 60s. So basically, what I'm going to get into is what this word is really meaning. I'm not going to suck up your energy and have you watching me online. We're going to get right into it. All right. I wonder if, let's see. I wonder if you'll have to pardon me because I'm getting used to this platform. So I'm also learning as I go and taking it easy. Let's see. All right. So tonight's discussion, why we're not Indigenous in Indigenous peoples in law. I also wanted to see if my screen would allow me to share because I want y'all to see exactly what I'm reading from, but if not, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to get into it real quick. All right, let's start off with the history. Of Indigenous Peoples Day. Shout out to the Indigenous peoples. Let's see here. Oh, all right. I really thought I was going to be able to share my screen. I need a little practice with this StreamYard, so just pardon me. Love me like I love you. I had some interesting, what I was going to say before I started was I had some interesting conversations today. And it's just some very particular energy that comes out of the West Coast because it's like, it's inquisitive. It's like, it comes off, well, who are you? What are you doing? And where'd you come from? It's like, my mother's womb. What do you mean? Where did you come from? Who told you could do? Who told you can ask me? Let me just make one thing clear. I'm not doing this platform to come across to anyone as if I'm an adept or I'm someone that you should follow in any form or fashion. Who I am is myself. I am that I am, first of all. That's who I'm always going to be. So if you call yourself asking me, well, why do you call yourself Sunny? Where'd you get that from? Or why do you, wear your fez? Who told you you can wear a fez? Well, who told me that I couldn't? And what authority do you have? And what warrant do you have to come in and search my mind for why I'm doing something? No, crickets? Oh, okay. Just wanted to be sure. Just wanted to be sure. Let's see. So, again, Indigenous Peoples Day is coming up. Kudos to the people who that applies to. However, we're not that. Let me see if I can grab my other device because I don't want you guys to lose my face the um, in the broadcast if I minimize. So just give me one moment. I do what I like. I do. I do. I do what I like. I do. I do. I do what I like. I do. I do. All right. So smile a little bit, people. Have some fun. Life is actually really good. You know, be happy about the fact that you're even alive and stop trolling the internet trying to figure out why someone is happy and comfortable in their own skin. Because I'm very comfortable. Um, all right. So first off, we have the history of Indigenous Peoples Day, right? Um, it's very clear. I'm only reading from Wikipedia, so you can go to it, you can take a look. Um, Indigenous Peoples Day, quote, is a holiday in the United States, first of all, that celebrates and honors Native American peoples, pardon, and commemorates their histories and cultures. On October 8th, 2021, U.S. President of the company, Joe Biden, became the first U.S. president to formally recognize the holiday. The first. By signing a presidential proclamation declaring on October 11th, 2021 to be a national holiday. So first of all, when people are looking at language, you're looking at what words mean. I really want to encourage us all to be able to read between the lines. Read what is exactly there, especially when it comes to something that is a legal or a lawful notice. If it says that he declared October 11, 2021 to be a national holiday, then that means that the day after that, and the year after that, and the year after that, there would need to be another proclamation. It's not a national holiday anymore. It's just something that was recognized 2021. All right. So it's a federal holiday. Again, federal, what does that mean? We're not going to get into that right now, but I encourage you to be able to read. If you know what these words mean, then you would know why I'm saying what I'm saying right now. All right. So it's just continuing. It is celebrated across the United States on the second Monday in October. So it's celebrated. And in its official and is, pardon, an official city and state holiday in various localities. It began as a counter celebration held on the same day as the U.S. federal holiday of Columbus Day, which honors Genovese-born explorer Christopher Columbus. Some people reject celebrating him, saying that he represents, quote, the violent history of the colonization in the Western Hemisphere. Indigenous Peoples Day was instituted in Berkeley, California, 1992, to coincide with the 500th anniversary of the arrival of Columbus in the Americas on October 12, 1492. 2 years later, Santa Cruz, California instituted the holiday. Starting in 2014, very recent ago, many other cities and states adopted the holiday. All right, let's stop there. So this is the history of this holiday and the status that it's in now. The description of it is very clear. It only celebrates and honors Native American peoples, and that is not who we are. So we are not native. We are primogenitures. We were the first. That would make us Aboriginal. Ah, yes, Aboriginal, not Indigenous. And some doctrines and proclamations or declarations, some contracts, these are all contracts. So some contracts would very loosely put that term Indigenous in there because, again, first of all, we're occupied by a foreign entity. If that foreign entity does not speak our language, our Aboriginal language, then we are going to be, in one way or another, forced to assimilate and speak their language. So it's all right to speak someone's language or use the form of language that they would comprehend or understand in order to get what we need, because it's all about uplifting one another, getting what we need, and being able to not stick out to the point where someone is ready to take you out. So, with that being said, let's just move on to, all right, and I'm gonna give you all references of what I'm reading from. I'm going to all right, let's put it this way. I'm going to be reading from the Black's Law Fourth and the etymology. We're going to use etymonline.com and the Webster's Dictionary 1828. So those are online. You can get all of those online. And again, I'm open for a discussion with the people who consider me their people, because again, I'm not here to go in and get my energy stole from people who are just wanting to draw off of someone else who has the balls to get online and say what they feel. I'm not here to impress you. I'm not here to be your friend. Um, period. I'm not on anyone's dossier. I'm not on anyone's docket. So therefore, I have no contract with you, and I have no obligation to do what you think I should be doing. Moving right along to the definition. Let's go to it in law, right? So in law, what we have to reference what this means, because now we're all talking about status. We're talking about, that's nationality is the order of the day, and so on and so forth. And so if that's the case, then you really need to be knowing what contracts you're getting yourself into. Pardon me. Alrighty. So let's see here. Now the Black's Law Dictionary, Henry Campbell, this book, I'm just going to read the cover because, again, all law is specific. So definition, the Black's Law Dictionary is the definition of the terms and phrases of American and English jurisprudence. All right. That is ancient and modern. So English and American, we're not talking about some other nation and what they consider to be indigenous or not. I'm talking about who we are here on this land because we're the ones that are occupied and we're the ones that need to clarify all the contracts that have been forced upon us under threat, duress, and coercion. So, with that being said, let's look up indigenous. I'm gonna tell you right now, we're not gonna find it. So you're not gonna find indigenous in the Black's Law because it's not a proper person, it's not a proper place, and it's not a proper thing. So therefore, it is not a noun. It is an adjective. Okay, so go ahead and do that. If you want to, look for it yourself, show me where you found it. It's not in here to my research. So, with that being said, if it's not a proper person, place, or thing, then let's just go to the next best thing, which would be an unabridged. So, let's try Webster's dictionary, 1828. That's the one that has the um, original definition for American as well. So, that would be a reference to know what American actually means. So, let's put indigenous in here. All right. Just so you can see what I'm reading from. My phone is old, but anywho, so indigenous is an adjective from the Latin indigena, supra meaning, superlative. The first definition is native, born in a country, applied to persons. So that could apply to us. However, it can only apply to people who are not Aboriginal. So it could apply to Aboriginal people, but it can only apply to those inhabitants who were born in a country applied to persons. The second definition is native, produced naturally in a country or climate, not exotic, applied to vegetables. So this is applied to vegetables. The second definition. The first one is applied to people. The second one, persons, rather, to be more specific, it's not people. There's another clue. So it's telling you what it is. Now, if I go in the same dictionary and I put in here Aboriginal, again, Aboriginal is an adjective as well. So you're not going to find that in the law dictionary. It's not a proper person, place, or a thing, but it does better describe who we are. We're not just indigenous, which is why this holiday that's just acknowledging indigenous peoples is not appropriate for us. Do you see why? Okay, February is a month that celebrates Black history. It's not appropriate for us. We're not Black history. We're world history. We're ancient, archaic history. All right, so moving right along because I have a little one who may or may not wake up, and I'm just wanting to get through this with you. All right, so Aboriginal adjective comes from the Latin ab, ab, and origo, which is origin, see origin. And again, I'm reading from the Webster's Dictionary, 1828.com. It says, first, original, primitive, Aboriginal people are the first inhabitants of a country. Aboriginal tribes of America, for example. And I'm not, that's it. It doesn't say Aboriginal tribes of Europe. It doesn't say Aboriginal tribes of China. I mean, it says America. So again, this is very clear to me. Once I looked into it, it's very clear. Um, Another definition for Aboriginal is also an adjective, An original or primitive inhabitant. The first settlers in a country are called aboriginals, as the Celts in Europe. Now, the Celts, we know what they look like. I don't have to go there. However, if you don't, then get with somebody who might want to go into that. I'm not going to go into that. The Celts in Europe and the Indians in America. All right. So there's a lot of controversy and a lot of issue with the term Indian. So I'm going to touch on that as well because they didn't call the holiday Aboriginal American Indian Peoples Day. They called it Indigenous Peoples Day, left it at that. And that was only because the people who are properly described as indigenous literally spoke up, asserted their birthright, and they made someone accommodate them in their needs. So why is it that we can't speak up, assert our birthright, not sit behind lives and sit behind social media accounts with no faces and no pictures and all this stuff? If you weren't doing anything illegal or unlawful, then why are you hiding behind caricatures and or whatever pictures? Um, I'm not gonna, I digress. But however, anyway, go to the town hall meeting, assert who you are, go in garb or whatever you feel like it, and be yourself. I'm not the only one who said it. No Ali. All right, so we're Aboriginal, put it that way. There is no holiday that celebrates Aborigines of America specifically. And with that being said, Indigenous Peoples Day is not for us. I'm going to keep saying that. So let's get into the Examon because now we need to really figure out who they're talking about in law. And I know that we have to recognize the United Nations giving the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and be able to accommodate anyone who could perhaps fall into the category of Indigenous peoples. That's fine. I don't see anything wrong with that because you can contract. That's your constitutional right to contract however you feel like contracting under whatever name you feel like being sued or suing someone in. All right, so moving right along, the etymon of indigenous. So if we're not this, then what is it? What is it? Where did it come? What does this word really mean? Denotatively, not connotatively. All right, etymonline.com says indigenous is an adjective describing a type of person. Quote, born or originating in a particular place, end quote, from the 1640s. From the late Latin indigenus or indigenus, which is, quote, born in a country or native, end quote, from the Latin indigena, quote, sprung from the land, native, end quote, as a noun. Now, this is getting into it as a noun. If you're going to use it as a noun, it's your prerogative. It's, quote, a native, end quote, literally, quote unquote, inborn or born in a place from Old Latin indu, which is in or within, quote unquote, plus gignere, this is the perfective gignu, which is, quote unquote, to beget or produce from the Proto-Indo-European root gene, which means give birth or beget, with derivatives referring to procreation and familial and tribal groups. All right, so none of that really was specific enough to me to say that that's who I am. I'm an indigenous person. Yeah, let's celebrate this because that's who I am. That's who my people were. This is that. No. It's not, and this is the etymology of the word. So it does not apply in that way. It can assist in describing who I am, but it's not who I am. Let's go into the etymology of Aboriginal. All right, that's interesting because right when I put in Aboriginal, um, autochthonous came up underneath, which is that's another term that can describe some of us. Actually, it can describe us as the Aboriginal people, but it cannot describe all of Native people. So Aboriginal adjective is from the 1660s. Quote, first, earliest, existing from the beginning, ab initio, end quote. So especially, it says, continuing, especially in reference to inhabitants of lands colonized by Europeans from Aborigines, see Aborigine plus AL. The specific Australian sense is attested from 1820. The noun meaning, quote, an original inhabitant in autochthon, end quote, is attested from 1760. So related terms are aboriginality, 1848, aboriginalism. All right. So the earliest, the first, the inhabitants. Now, the reason why this is important that we, not assimilate to our amalgamated brothers and sisters who we love so dearly because we're all a part of humanity. So it's no slight again. However, the reason why we want to be specific is because, again, all law is specific. However, if we are not specific enough to assert our birthrights, then we're going to keep going in the same circles, the same issues that we had hundreds of years ago, current day, this and that. Oh, well, I'm Moorish American, or I'm this, or I'm that. And now it's changing because the laws are changing and the matrix is changing. And so now I'm black and I'm not colored and African. It's all, these are all misnomers. Um, Misnomers. I'm not referring to Moorish American, but again, even Moorish, the term Moorish, I know y'all going to be mad at me for saying this, but that's an adjective. It's describing a type of American, specifically the type of American who subscribes to a specific body politic, not an ethnicity. So, with that being said, it's not your ethnicity. It's not what your ancestors may or may not have been, because Drew Ali brought that in the 1920s. And so if your ancestors date back further than him, then you weren't Moorish American back then, necessarily. I mean, I stand to be corrected. You probably can correct me on that. However, with that being said, I'm talking about the religious corporate structure of the MST of A, that one. Um, yes. So, all right, let's move right along, because what I also wanted to get into was the proclamation that the corporate president, CEO of the company, the U.S. actually read or wrote into the record. So let's read that because it's very important what he said, did not say, and why it doesn't apply to us as the Aboriginal people. So I'm going to read this quickly. You can find it on the White House website. Let's see if I can pull it up in my. hmm, I thought I had it right here. Oh, there it is. All right. So here it is. Let's read this. It would be way cooler if I can share my screen. So I'm going to work on sharing my screen for next time. So I just don't want to, bother with practicing with your time, and I don't want to waste your time. So let's get on with it. All right. A proclamation on Indigenous Peoples Day 2021. Date is October 8th, 2021. Presidential actions. It begins saying, since the immemorial, let me bring it closer here. Since time immemorial, American Indians, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians, pardon me, have built vibrant and diverse cultures, safeguarding land, language, spirit, knowledge, and tradition across the generations. All right, stop. Did you hear what I heard? Since time immemorial, American Indians, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians, three different groups of people here, have built vibrant and diverse cultures, safeguarding land, language, spirit is breath, knowledge, and tradition across generations. On Indigenous Peoples Day, specifically, their nation, celebrates the invaluable contributions and resilience of Indigenous peoples, recognizes their inherent sovereignty, and commits to honoring the federal government's, my phone just went out. Hold on. The federal government's dot 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 trust and treaty obligations to tribal nations. All right. So this is the first paragraph. So when they say that on Indigenous Peoples Day, our nation celebrates invaluable contributions of Indigenous peoples, that is not us. So they're not celebrating us. They're only celebrating the people who can consider themselves Indigenous peoples and recognize their inherent sovereignty, committing to the federal government's trust and treaty obligations to tribal nations. All right. So with that being said, what treaty do Native Americans necessarily have that doesn't say Indian? So we're going to get into that too, because the difference between Native American and Indian is very much so distinct in law as well, because a native is not the primogeniture. The real difference that we're getting into here, and you've heard of it before, I'm sure, and if you haven't, what it is, and this is why it's important, is because one is governed by the treatise of jus soli, the law of the soil. The other is treated by jus sanguinis, which is the right by blood, inheritance. So wherever I am on the planet, because I descend from this bloodline, is the reason why I have this right. Doesn't matter if I was born in a plane or on a boat somewhere, I'm still the heir. Are these people heirs to the land? Yes? No? Is anybody chatting with me? I haven't seen anything come up yet. So I mean I'm looking. However, get with me later. If not, you know where to find me. I'm Pink Illuminance everywhere. With that being said, that's very important. That's a very important thing to note, the jus soli right versus the jus sanguinis right, because no matter what we want to subscribe to as far as world ancient history, these people were not here before us. The oldest bones, the oldest uh, proof of existence of beings, human, well, loosely human, um, Homo sapien, sapien. However, they keep coming up with us, people with our phenotype, people with our DNA. They are not coming up with anything that resembles an amalgamated, a mixture, anything with six ether hair. They're coming up with locks of hair. They're coming up with wide noses and high cheekbones, and people who are our predecessors. So, with that being said, let's see here. Um, I mean, this is not a really hard thing to grasp, folks. Um, and like I said, because it's coming up this week, I just wanted to, make it clear that yes, we can join in. However, is that really who we are? Um, you know, another thing to really, really recognize about the term indigenous is when you take off the adjective portion, which is the OUS, right? The OUS portion off. You're left with the term indigent rather. And indigent is actually referred to in the Black's Law. So indigent, pardon me, an indigent in the Black's Law actually refers to someone who is, well, how about I read it verbatim so that there's no confusion. Let me read it to you verbatim, and then we'll get back to this contract of the proclamation because this is important. This is how I break things down. This is how I study. This is how we all were instructed to study. You need to be able to break down certain words. If you don't know what that word means, then go and find out and read it. And I appreciate the people who have taught me this, regardless to the relationship or lack thereof. So in the Black's Law Dictionary, indigent, let me get to it here. Individual, let's see. Here it is. All right, so indigent is actually in the Black's Law. It's on page 913, and it says, quote, in Old English law, a subject, are you a subject? Born. Oh, my apologies. I'm actually reading indigena, which is the Latin term. Let me read indigent. So in a general indigent, I'll read both. How about we read both because indigena, Indigena is actually the Spanish or more Latin term for indigent. So it's still the same word. However, they distinguish it differently. So let's read it. So in Old English law, a subject born, one born within the realm or naturalized by act of parliament. Does that sound like you? Were you naturalized by act of parliament? Or were you born with your birthrights intact as an heir? Which one? All right, so the second term, that's the English term, indigent, says, quote, in a general sense, one who is needy and poor, or one who has not sufficient property to furnish him a living, nor anyone able to support him, to whom he is entitled to look for support. So let me read that one more time. It says, in a general sense, this is indigent, which will be the proper person of indigenous. In a general sense, one who is needy and poor, or one who has not sufficient property to furnish him a living, nor anyone able to support him to whom he is entitled to look for support. So you don't have An inheritance is what that really means. Granted, we are in a predicament of circumstances where our inheritance was usurped, taken from us wrongfully, stolen. Um, that doesn't mean that we fall into the category of one who is needy and poor, because we're not. We can always go and get our allodial property back from those who feudally have taken it. So, with that being said, again, I don't want to be called indigenous. I don't know about you, but I'm not poor and needy. I have much more than, you know, I've been gifted, I've been favored, and I'm thankful. However, I'm not poor, nor am I needy. Mother loves me and she provides. So, with that being said, there's one more. There's one more that's really interesting as far as under indigent insane person is the next definition. It says an insane person with insufficient estate to pay for his maintenance in the hospital after providing for those who could claim his support. Yeah, that's not us. So, being categorized by a feudal entity and celebrated in some form or fashion, recognized in some form or fashion, that is not goals, not for me. I'm not, putting my spirit on anyone. However, I'm going to be me regardless. So, with that being said, let's go back to the rest of this proclamation, this contract, and read the other terms of it, because I want to get into well, since I'm here, how about we just go into the term Indian, right? So American Indian. Let's just break that down real quick and see if it really does apply better to who we are in law, not your culture, not your tribe's ethnicity, and what language you call yourself. I'm not referring to that. I'm talking about in law when we go and deal in commerce, which you have to do, which you absolutely do every single day, whether it's verbal, by phone, online, when you use these apps and these media, social media sites, you are contracting. You are agreeing to the policies and the contracts that these entities have put forth, whether it's in the background and fine print or what have you. You're contracting, so you need to really learn how to read. We do. Indian, right? Let's look up American first. This is not news. It's not nothing new. American in the Black's Law, right? All right. It's on page 107. American, pertaining to the Western Hemisphere, or in a more restricted sense to the United States. And it has the case law. It says it was assumed in life photo, my apologies. It was assumed in life, and then it has the case law. It says that the term American included all classes of citizens, native and naturalized, irrespective of where they originally came from. So this is the law definition of American, which is why these people who are not Aboriginal to here, because now again, if you put Aboriginal in front of American, now that makes me the first American. I don't care if you call yourself American, loosely, you think that you're an American. I'm the first one though. So I have the blood right. So I have the jus sanguineus right. That's the treaties, the law, the jurisprudence, and the jurisdiction that I'm under. I don't know about you. All right. So with that being said, let's go up to Indian, right? Indian in law. And then we're going to go to um, a definition of American, which, matter of fact, let me just pull it up because we're on American. American per the Webster's Dictionary of 1828 clearly says a noun, a native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. All right. So again, this is originally applied to us, the Aboriginals, or copper-colored races. That's a physical descriptive term so that we know who we're talking about here. Found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. All right. So who's American originally? And now, since everyone wants to impersonate me and you, now I have to be more specific with how I contract and how I go about asserting who I am and I am that I am. I'm an Aboriginal. I'm first. I'm not just Indigenous peoples. All right. And then let's go to Indian. And I'm going to wrap up here in a minute because this is all very much something that you all can do on your own. However, I'm not sure why no one has ever brought this to my attention specifically before now. So I had to bring it to my own attention. All right, so Indian, because a lot of people, I mean, I don't even, honestly, I don't care about people who don't. If you and I are not on the same frequency, how about we just be on separate frequencies? You don't have to subscribe to what I say or my train of thought. And I don't have to subscribe to yours. So I'm not going to keep addressing people who oppose me because I'm not going to give those people energy that way. I'm just going to make sure that you know where it is that I'm coming from. All right, Indian. Uh-oh, I hear a little baby. Give me 1 second, y'all. 2 seconds. I'm a breastfeeding mom, so just bear with me. One moment. I'm coming. I'm coming, Boo. Come here. All right, here I come. Pardon me. All right. So, real quick, with this being said, I'm gonna wrap up in a minute. We're looking at Indian, right? So the proclamation referred to us as American Indians. Indian is, per the law dictionary, the Aboriginal inhabitants of North America. It does not say Native Americans in law. So if the term indigenous per Wikipedia, which is cited different sources, if it is only celebrating Native Americans, and in the law dictionary, we are the Aboriginal inhabitants of North America, which would be considered per the proclamation that the company put out there, American Indian. Just because they say American Indian does not mean that Indigenous Peoples Day is celebrating us, because it's not. It just isn't. And until we are uniform in our thought, in our mind, in coming to the same place, whether that be a misnomer or not, or whether you think that it only applies to people from India, that's not true. It's just not true. It applies in law because we are law abiders, we're not outlaws. It applies to the Aboriginal inhabitants of North America. It doesn't even talk about people in South America or um, Canada, to be honest with you. However, that's because they have their own set of jurisprudence and jurisdiction that they are under. So we here have to get it together, is the point. And until we do, we're going to keep being pulled, tugged. Our families are going to keep being swayed and destroyed infrastructurally until we can figure this out, until we can agree. It's all about being agreeable. Agree to something. If we agree that we're Aboriginals, we were the first here, I think that's a general consensus among people who look like me. Then why is it so hard for us to assert our Aboriginal status and not keep conforming to what someone else has done because they've been able to get the gumption to lock hands with one another and assert themselves as a group? It's like I get a little bit thrown off because everybody wants to be a damn chief and nobody wants to be the Indian, literally and figuratively. So, all right, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and read the last bit of this proclamation for the record so that we can see, again, what they're really talking about here, because I made that point already about who we are in law, regardless to what someone wants to say about it or not. All right, so this was a cool part. This is actually really interesting because this proclamation goes on to say, and this is Biden speaking, our country was conceived on a promise of equality and opportunity for all people, a promise that, despite the extraordinary progress we have made through the years, we have never fully lived up to. So he's admitting to running off on the plug, which was the Emperor of Morocco from the letter from George Washington. So I already knew what they was talking about right there. Um, he ran off on us, never fully lived up to the promise of equality and opportunity for all people, despite the progress, whatever progress that is for them, but not for us. So continuing on, it says that is especially true when it comes to upholding the rights and dignity of the indigenous people who were here long before colonization of the Americas began. All right. For generations, federal policies systematically sought to assimilate and displace Native American people and eradicate Native cultures. So now we're getting back specific to Native Americans. What you're going to see here is that he never addresses American Indian. I'm going to keep reading. Today, we recognize Indigenous peoples' resilience and strength, as well as the immeasurable positive impact that they have made on every aspect of American society. We also recommit to supporting a new, brighter future of promise and equity for tribal nations, a future grounded in tribal sovereignty and respect for the human rights of Indigenous peoples in the Americas and around the world. All right, so would that be even, pause on homo right there? Because if you're talking about indigenous peoples in the Americas and around the world, then that means that these people travel, they're nomads. They go to inhabit places where they are welcome. There's a lot of people who get on those boats currently right now across the world in Lebanon. These people are hopping on boats, risking their lives to find some refuge somewhere else. Just because they keep up with their native traditions does not make them the original people to wherever they end up at. Ukraine is currently warring with Russia because they wanted to separate from the jurisdiction that has always been them. Ukraine and Russian is synonymously the same people. They did not even become a country until like the 90s or something like that. So, yeah, meanwhile, we're over here blowing flags of whatever. Anywho, I'm going to continue reading this. It's just a few more paragraphs. So it continues and says, in the first week of my administration, I issued a memorandum, which is what we can do as jurisconsults, by the way, reaffirming our nation's solemn trust and treaty obligations, to American Indian and Alaska Native tribal nations. So now we're not talking about who the Native American, we're talking about Alaska Natives. And remember when Alaska had basically separated from the corporation themselves? They wanted to be their own country. I think they still are, something like that. I stand to be corrected. Like I said, I'm not here to sway anybody and I'm not here to steal your energy. I'm just giving you my perspective and um, opening up the dialogue so that we can come to a general consensus and move forward as a people, regardless to what tribe you may have come from or what school of thought you may have learned in. Continuing, it says, let me read it again because it's one sentence. I issued a memorandum reaffirming our nation's solemn trust and treaty obligations to American Indian and Alaska Native tribal nations. And I directed, or I'm saying I loosely, I directed the heads of executive departments and agencies to engage in regular, meaningful, and robust consultation with tribal officials. It is a priority of my administration to make respect for tribal sovereignty and self-governance the cornerstone of federal Indian policy. That should, right there, the term federal Indian policy, um, that should offend you because we're not a federation. We are a confederation originally. Um, and also, we are a republic. And per the Constitution, for them, we are to be guaranteed that Republican form of government. So why don't we have it? Oh, because we're not telling them that we're here. We're technically abandoned orphans. We've abandoned ship. We're orphans. We're not, we don't exist. These people, they say that our tribes are prehistoric and no longer, the people disappeared. Really? Did we? All right. So continuing, it says the history demonstrates that Native American people, now we're back to Native American people, right? He keeps hopping and jumping to different, it, the connotative meaning is not the denotative meaning. So what we're connotatively seeing here is that they're trying to spell cast in a way where you think that all of these terms are interchangeable and synonymous, and they're not. They're not. So be clear, or else it becomes an adhesion contract and it's void ab initio anyway. All right. So it says history demonstrates that Native American people and our nation as a whole are best served when tribal governments are empowered to lead their communities, and when federal officials listen to and work together with tribal leaders when formulating federal policy that affects tribal nations. We're under occupation, people. We're going to continue being talked at and thrown around until we can figure out how to come to a general consensus of who we are in law, and associate those laws and take our place amongst the affairs of men in law, not in your temple. All right, continuing. Every time I see federal, it's offensive. And I have a right to be offended because that's not what we agreed to per the treaties with the original Aboriginal Americans, the Delaware Moors, Indians, the Pamunkey and the Powhatan. The emperor was an Indian. The emperor of Powhatan. What do you mean federal and all this other stuff? That it doesn't even, those two things don't make any sense. And this is what this contract is saying. And people are literally celebrating the second Monday of every October. This is not to be celebrated. All right, continuing. It says the contributions that Indigenous peoples have made. The contributions that Indigenous peoples have made throughout history in public service, entrepreneurship, scholarship, the arts, and countless other fields are integral to our nation, our culture, and our society. Indigenous peoples have served and continue to serve. I'm in service to my people. I don't know who he's talking about here, but it's not me. I am not in service to no federal corporation. I serve me, my family, and my people. I'm in service to my household, all right? In service to serve, continue, have served and continue to serve in the United States Force, Armed Force with distinction and honor at the highest rates of any group, defending our security every day. And Native Americans have been on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic, working essential jobs and carrying us through our gravest moments. So he's saying that Native Americans have been carrying them through their gravest moments of the pandemic. Further, in recognition that the pandemic has harmed Indigenous peoples at an alarming rate and disappropriate, my pardon, and disproportionate rate, Native communities have led the way in connecting people with vaccination, boasting some of the highest rates of any racial or ethnic group. All right, none of this seems to really apply to me yet, so I'm just going to continue to read and see if any of this works for me, describes me in any way. The federal government has a solemn obligation to lift up and invest in the future of Indigenous peoples and empower tribal nations. All right, I'm a tribal nation, you know. So if they're going to empower us, then I'm going to need to let them know that I'm here, um, and or get a military to get them out of here. But one or the other. I don't know what we're going to do until then. Again, so we're not terrorists. We're just self-governing people. And with that being said, this being our inheritance, we have the right to our traditions, our culture, to not have to conform and assimilate. And these people have taken oaths to ensure that that's the case. But obviously, earlier in this proclamation, he very much admitted to not upholding the obligation. So now they're restating the obligation. Um, doesn't mean that they're going to do it. So continuing on, it's almost done. It says we must never forget the centuries-long campaign of violence, displacement, assimilation, and terror wrought upon Native communities and tribal nations throughout our country. So there's a distinction again, Native communities and tribal nations, two different things. Today, we acknowledge the significant sacrifices made by Native peoples to this country. It doesn't say Native peoples and tribal nations to this country. It says, today we acknowledge the significant sacrifices made by Native peoples to this country and recognize their many ongoing contributions to our nation, period. That is what that day is for. And if you are not Native, this is not for you. With that being said, and Native just means originating from, it does not mean that you are the heir. It means you were born somewhere, Juice solely. Continuing on Indigenous Peoples Day, we honor America's first inhabitants, not first inhabitants, and the tribal nations that continue to thrive today. So even there, it says that continue to thrive today. So then that means that if I have not been given the opportunity because my family Bibles and pictures and uh, artifacts and memoirs and heirlooms were burned, stolen, and taken into dark chambers, thrown into whatever dark room. If I don't have that, then that means that how would I be currently continuing to thrive today? So if they're only saying that we honor the people who are continuing to thrive today, and that's not us because our stuff was stolen, then that means that if they are not honoring us on Indigenous Peoples Day. Period. He's saying it over and over again. Like it's so clear. Continuing, I encourage everyone to celebrate and recognize the many Indigenous communities and cultures that make up our great country. Now, therefore, I, Joseph R. Biden Sr., this is all caps, that portion, all capital letters, President of the United States of America, loosely, do hereby proclaim October 11, 2021 as Indigenous Peoples Day. I call upon the people of the United States to observe this day with appropriate ceremonies and activities. I also direct that the flag of the United States banner be displayed on all public buildings on the appointed day in honor of our diverse history and the Indigenous peoples who contribute to shaping this nation. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 8th day of October in the year of our Lord, their Lord, 2021, and of the independence of the United States of America. Independence from who? Oh, yeah, that's right. They didn't have a home either, so they sought refuge here. Got it. Okay, so uh, just to finish the sentence, United States, the 246th independence, as they're talking about. Joseph R. Biden Jr., signed, sealed, delivered to the Native people inhabited here after there were already people here. And again, one can be indigenous, however, one them cannot be Indigenous and Aboriginal. That's only us. So with that being said, and it very clearly being stated that we're not the ones being celebrated on this day, I would strongly encourage our people to, again, figure out what it is that we need to do to unify. It's the same, it's so it's the same conversation over and over. Everybody wants to be so special and so different. No one said you weren't special. No one said you wouldn't be celebrated for who you are. However, if you can't celebrate the next person for who they are, then what gives you the respect to get celebrated for who you are? And that goes for anybody that calls themselves one thing or another. And I guess I'm gonna yield there because it's pretty clear to me, but if anyone wants to let me know why we should consider ourselves Indigenous peoples and for this holiday be celebrated for what was literally read into the record as a falling short of their obligation to people who were here before colonization. Um, I'm just going to leave it at this. Our South American and Mexican brothers and sisters, they know what time it is. They don't have an issue, you know. Um, However, we not all of us have issues either. I would think that the people who are governing themselves appropriately by way of their tribes would be able to share their experiences because there are a lot of us who are stuck in uh, a circle of a bunch of spell casts that are put on us by way of our own people who are looking to usurp and steal others' energy. And it's just not cool. I'm not with it, which is why you won't see me joining in kumbayaing with people because I'm not with it. There's nobody that I can call besides my own nucleus tribe when I need to be assisted in my own trustees. I have trustees, by the way. So, I'm straight. But what I'm saying is, in general, if something happens to me, my children, or, my parents, or, my spouse, or whoever, there's only a select few people that I can call on, and that's my tribe. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we are of the same ancestral lineage, but in this day and age, you need to tribe up with people who have got your back. There is not one temple, not a mosque, not a church that I can call to assist me when I need it most for me and my children. That's really why, no disrespect, I really don't care what people of those groups and doctrines have to say because y'all don't feed me. Y'all don't. All right, I said I wasn't going to address this, but I have to because it's too much entitlement. I don't owe you nothing. I don't owe you people anything. Not an explanation, not where'd you get your fez. I don't owe you anything. And if you don't have a warrant to search my mind again, you need to go ahead on somewhere, bruh, sis. Take it as it is. So I yield. I love y'all, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. And if you have a complaint, I would strongly suggest that you abide by your own constitution and bylaws. Um, and come in love because I come in love and peace. Your first principle, love, truth, love first. Right. So with that being said, like I said, I love you all. And I opened the door as a student to learn from someone who may be able to add to the discussion here. All right. So that is it. That is all. I'm gonna go ahead and give you some tea and go along with it. All right. Peace.